Remember 4 years ago, on June 7th and 8th, the days of my college entrance examination, my parents didn't come to see me off. They went back to their hometown for my great-grandfather's funeral. But before leaving, they called Mr. David sincerely and entrusted me to him. Mr. David teaches math and he isn't our class teacher. My parents chose to entrust me to him probably because I always talked about Mr. David at the dinner table. Mr. David graduated from Harvard University. It's a prestigious school, and he's extremely handsome. Mr. David said I was too careless. I even got the 8th fill-in-the-blank question wrong. Mr. David came up with 4 solutions to the last big question on today's mock test. There were only 2 in the standard answer. Mr. David, I thought it was all my fault. It was my endless chatter that made my parents think Mr. David liked me a lot. And when he was entrusted by my parents, he must have been a bit annoyed. But as a teacher, he couldn't refuse. Amanda. In the noisy voices around, I immediately heard him calling my name. His voice was as calm and composed as when he was teaching, without a trace of emotion. I turned around and saw him standing there, at just the right distance, neither too close nor too far. His hands were in his pockets, and he was looking down at me with an unusually gentle posture. Don't be nervous. Do well in the exam. His tone became a bit more relaxed, and he added jokingly, just perform normally, and you can get into any Ivy League school you want. What did I answer at that time? Oh, right. I really like sycamore trees. I said at that time. I want to go to Harvard University. That's the Harvard University where, as you once recalled in class, there are 2 rows of golden sycamore trees in front of the library. Mr. David came to teach us math in our senior year of high school. In the first class, he didn't even introduce himself. He just handed out the teaching outline and started the class. He never used textbooks in class, only the teaching outline. At first, I wasn't used to it. I held the thin piece of paper and grumbled, "What's this? Are we going to rely on this piece of paper for the whole senior year of high school?" The person sitting in front of me turned around, grinning foolishly, about to tease me, but then his face changed, and he quickly turned back. My heart skipped a beat, and I thought, oh no. A slender hand reached over from my shoulder, picked up the math book on the upper left corner of my desk, flipped through it casually, and saw my name. When he spoke, his voice was cold and distant. Amanda, the teacher is trying to relieve your stress, and you're not happy about it, huh? After that, he walked past me. Before leaving, he gently tapped my head with the math book. His fingers had the smell of mint-scented hand sanitizer, and they touched my bangs. I blinked and saw his fair fingertips. Mr. David is definitely not the kind of teacher who would relieve student stress. The thin teaching outline that I underestimated gave everyone in the class a hard time. From the first question on the first page, some students started to struggle. It's been a long time coming. And in the next class, there was a new teaching outline. So in math class, we had to be highly concentrated to survive under these few pieces of paper. This question is interesting. Mr. David leaned on the podium with both hands, holding a white chalk between his fingers. His eyes glanced at me. Amanda can relate to this. She's seen this question before, and she's seen it a lot. The whole class burst into laughter. Did you get it wrong again this time? He looked at me leisurely, waiting for my response. I was silent for a moment, held my forehead, and nodded in humiliation. Then the whole class laughed again. Mr. David shifted his attention to someone else in a timely manner, and I felt a little more relaxed. Mr. David is so tough, I muttered softly. He even knows who is likely to get what questions wrong. Probably because my act of underestimating the teaching outline on the first day of school left a deep impression on Mr. David. He always thought I hated math. But actually, the main reason I chose science was because of math. What made Mr. David change his impression of me was probably that time. There was an example question on page 14 of the teaching outline, asking for the expression of a conic section. He was patiently deriving it step by step from the equation of a circle. Even Mr. David couldn't change the fact that the problem-solving process was boring and that the hot summer made senior year of high school unexciting. At that time, with a thin layer of sweat on my forehead, I had a sudden inspiration that I raised my hand tremblingly and said something that made me proud throughout the senior year of high school. Mr. David. This way of thinking is too complicated. The enthusiastic gazes of the whole class turned towards me. They weren't looking at a top student but at a brave person. As if to say, Amanda, you're the first one to dare to question Mr. David. Mr. David's reaction wasn't as intense as the onlookers. He just said indifferently, oh, then you come and solve it. I wasn't polite either. I grabbed the chalk and bravely went up to the blackboard. So, for the problem that Mr. David couldn't finish solving on 2 blackboards, I found a tricky shortcut and finished it on half a blackboard. The 2 distinct types of handwriting were closely side by side. One was casual, and the other was delicate. The only thing that seemed a bit out of place was that my delicate, in conclusion, was written in his usual running regular script, clearly imitating his handwriting. A look of surprise flashed across his face, and then he showed a very brief smile. It wasn't the kind of relief for a student's academic success but a straightforward appreciation. Mr. David said, not bad. Amanda, you're quick-witted. Standing on the podium with him, so close to him, I could see the change in his expression, and I was sure that only I saw it. For no reason. I remembered the smell of mint-scented hand sanitizer on his fingertips that day. Suddenly, I felt a coolness in the summer, so comfortable that I wanted to drown in that moment. My heart was pounding, and my whole body's blood vessels seemed to be throbbing along. I didn't think carefully about what strange and complex feelings had drawn me into this silent turmoil. Later, when I thought about it, perhaps it was this look that made me realize the difference between Mr. David and others. This was a kind of appreciation that could only be felt for an independent individual, especially the respect and appreciation from a teacher. For a senior year high school student who was always regarded as a learning machine, it was of great significance. At that moment, I truly felt the sweet taste of being respected, and it even made me fall in love with math completely. But math is so profound and introverted, and a senior year high school student is so shallow and inexperienced. So, my self-righteous love only focused on Mr. David, who was like the spokesperson of math to me. After that, I worked hard and became obsessed with various types of math problems, with a determination that I wouldn't regret even if I grew thinner. When the results of the first mock exam came out, I surprisingly got the first place in math in the whole city. Overjoyed, I patted my chest and boasted to the whole class, I'm Amanda, Mr. David's favorite student. The name, Mr. David's favorite student, spread quickly. Later, even the English teacher jokingly said in class, now, let Mr. David's favorite student explain why we choose C for this blank. Only then did I realize that probably the whole teacher's office knew about my boast, although I bravely admitted it at that time. I was actually shy, flustered, and a little bit resentful. Why didn't Mr. David show any reaction at all? Mr. David did show his reaction, a subtle but unmistakable one. As my math level improved significantly, Mr. David not only silently accepted my self-proclaimed title of favorite student, but also seemed to regard me as his right-hand man. Once, after a PE class, when I was returning to the classroom, I passed by another class that Mr. David taught. He waved at me and called me in. What's up, teacher? I went in carelessly at that time, blinking my eyes and looking at him. He didn't look well at first, but his expression softened when he saw me. He handed me the chalk and pointed to a question on the PPT. Come and solve this problem. I'm too tired to teach. He sighed, as if he was very angry with the students in this class that I was sensible enough not to ask too many questions. I took the chalk from him and started writing and explaining with great enthusiasm. Mr. David leaned against the window, looking towards the playground, as if he didn't care about the progress here at all, leaving a handsome side profile for us. I glanced at his side profile and got distracted. When I was talking about the eccentricity formula, I got stuck. He turned his head and met my eyes, as if he was about to scold me, but finally gave up and shook his head helplessly. He walked to the podium and flipped through his teaching outline to a certain page and handed it to me. There were beautiful running regular script words on it. Even the numbers and letters were very beautiful. I immediately found the formula and then smoothly continued to explain, as if I had never got stuck. Later, many students from the neighboring class came to ask about me. I didn't take it to heart. In my opinion, I wasn't explaining the questions to them but showing Mr. David how capable his favorite student was. And he clearly realized this. Later, when he was tired, he would ask me to come and explain the questions. Sometimes, when he couldn't finish grading the papers, he would also ask me to go to the office to help out. Actually, it wasn't hard at all. How could it be hard to be able to lie on Mr. David's desk and do the same thing as him quietly? In a word, Mr. David spoiled his favorite student to the extreme, recalling the things in high school. Those memories that seemed to have faded still felt vivid, full of passionate hope, subtle madness, and pure carefreeness. In contrast, my current life is as boring as a stagnant pool of water, staring at the delicate invitation in my hand. I thought that actually, the story could have ended well here. I was an excellent student, envied by my classmates and appreciated by my teachers. I was admitted to my dream university as I wished, leaving no regrets in my youth. And everything seemed so bright, but as the saying goes, things often go contrary to one's wishes. Happiness and joy are blurred, while pain is always unforgettable. When I finally stopped being that rash girl and grew up, I naturally understood some truths. For example, what people can remember deeply are only the regrets, especially in matters of love. In the eyes of many people, Mr. David's favorite student was extremely arrogant. Mr. David's intentional or unintentional favoritism gradually established my status. I sometimes watched Korean dramas, and there was a popular saying at that time, if you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. Now thinking about it, this saying seems a bit melodramatic when used on students, but at that time, I really felt it deeply. Mr. David's affirmation and the honor he gave me were like my crown. I had to maintain my position. At least keep my first place math score in the city. To be honest, I was really too arrogant at that time. I wasn't afraid of others' sarcasm and jealousy. And I didn't care about the warning like, a tree that stands out in the forest is easily toppled by the wind. The wind couldn't break this tree of mine. I trusted Mr. David 100. As long as Mr. David was there, he would definitely protect me. And I didn't need to face those things. That I was so obsessed with math that I remember once during a math exam, I was too tired. I just took a look at the last question and then fell asleep. Before closing my eyes, I saw Mr. David smiling at me. He saw me sleeping but didn't wake me up, which made me a little angry. I thought I'd deal with him after I had a rest. Sure enough, when I woke up, my mind was full of ideas, and I wrote down the answers while yawning. In ancient times, Chow Chow killed people in his dream. Now, Amanda, solved problems while sleeping. In the field of study, how much effort you put in determines how much return you get, except for study. There's nothing in this world that's so rewarding. In most things, the return is far less than the effort, or there's no return at all. But at that time, my efforts paid off, and they paid off greatly. Throughout my senior year of high school, until the end of the college entrance examination, I still got the first place in math. However, because I put too much effort into math, I inevitably fell behind in other subjects. When the physics teacher dragged me to the office to do makeup homework, I lay on Mr. David's desk. At that time, he was giving a night self-study class in the neighboring class. Speaking of which, physics and math aren't very different. Thinking carefully, physics suits my personality better. Physics is more flexible, while math requires a more rigorous logical process and great patience. But unfortunately, the physics teacher was bald, while Mr. David was extremely good-looking. In fact, I had already made my choice at that time. You students all like math. You're all thinking about math in physics class, the physics teacher said, holding his thermos cup and watching me do my homework. There was a hint of schadenfreude in his tone. No matter what magic potion Mr. David gave you, now you still have to do your physics homework obediently. I looked up and forced a smile at him, then continued to do my homework. The physics teacher sighed. Actually, when I was young, I was as handsome as Mr. David is now. I'm old now. You kids are all rushing to be his favorite students, leaving me all alone. I still kept my head down, pretending not to understand. Unexpectedly, the office door was pushed open. It was February 8th. A cold wind blew in through the crack of the door, making me shiver. I couldn't help but look up and saw Mr. David coming in. He was wearing a coat and a gray scarf, There was a thin layer of snow on the stack of papers in his elbow and on his glasses. However, no matter what his posture was, he was incredibly good-looking when he saw me occupying his desk. Mr. David pursed his lips, as if he was going to get angry. But finally, as usual, he just showed helplessness. Amanda. You're so bold. I gave him the brightest smile I could muster. The physics teacher laughed and said, "Yeah, how can you occupy the math teacher's desk to do physics homework? It's so disrespectful to your Mr. David." Mr. David. Scold her. I turned to look at the physics teacher, feeling wronged. It was you who asked me to do my homework here and use this desk. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the courage to get close to Mr. David's desk. This is the place closest to him in the whole school. Usually, I might seem bold, but in fact, I'm very timid and scared inside. Of course. Mr. David wouldn't be angry with his favorite student. He smiled and didn't say anything. He stepped aside. And a girl came in. She should be from the neighboring class. He turned to her with a frown. "Stop complaining. There's someone to keep you company now. Go and sit over there and finish correcting today's test paper before you leave." She pouted, looking very reluctant. Mr. David rubbed his forehead, seemingly very headache about such a student. "I've brought you to the office to enjoy the air conditioner. What else do you want?" "I want to go home," the girl said stubbornly. Mr. David's face turned cold. "No way." I stared at them curiously. But the bald teacher tapped my head with a snap. So I lowered my head and continued to do my physics homework, looking pitiful. The girl looked even more pitiful than me. Her smile was uglier than her cry. She walked to my side reluctantly, and I moved aside. We both lay on Mr. David's desk and started doing our homework. She did math, and I did physics. Later, I found out that she wasn't a bad student at all. On the contrary, she was quite excellent. She was the physics class representative of the neighboring class. Just the opposite of me. She almost hated math. At this moment, we complemented each other perfectly. After a while of eye contact, we felt a sense of mutual admiration. After understanding each other's homework, we quickly exchanged. I helped her correct the math, and she helped me with my physics homework. With this division of labor, our efficiency was greatly improved. Of course, we both used pencils, and later we would write our own answers respectively to avoid being noticed by the two teachers through our handwriting. I admired her quick and accurate physical thinking, and she admired my wild math thinking. So, for a whole week, we met in the office. Finally, we became good friends. Oh, by the way, her name is Lily. Lily and I have identical hobbies. We both love watching anime and Korean dramas. Moreover, she occasionally recommends Hegel to me, and I casually discuss Schopenhauer with her. It's quite rare for two science-inclined girls to be so into philosophy. We're really something special. The only difference is that I idolize Mr. David. I just can't bring myself to like our bald physics teacher, while she deeply respects the bald teacher and tries to avoid good-looking guys like Mr. David. On weekends, we go to the library to do our homework together. When we chat, we talk about everything from which celebrity is the most handsome to whether Marcuse belongs to the radical school. But what we talk about most are the funny stories about our teachers. She bursts out laughing when I tell her how the bald physics teacher teases and torments me. And I find it so cute when she gets so angry that she purses her lips and snorts just because Mr. David keeps asking her questions in class and she can't answer them. Lily and I are the best of friends, even though we haven't known each other for long. Our friendship is as if we've known each other forever. When our emotions run high, we've even seriously discussed whether we could marry each other in the future. Lily knows all my secrets, except that I have a crush on Mr. David. She's never asked about it. Maybe she thinks my feelings for Mr. David are just like her feelings for the physics teacher. Mere respect. But how could that be? How could I be content with just admiring Mr. David? So, in the week when the results of the second mock exam came out, Lily held my full-mark math paper with trembling hands and burst into tears. "Amanda, I surrender. What on earth made you conquer this tricky math? Being Mr. David's favorite student adds 100 IQ points," I said to her with a big smile. Mr. David's spirit was with me in the exam room. Damn it, Lily was annoyed. Then why didn't I get a full mark in physics? In fact, no one in our school got a full mark in physics. Lily was already one of the top students. Besides me, there were two other students who got full marks in math. But I didn't pay attention to how students in other schools did. After all, our feelings for our teachers are different. I patted her on the shoulder to comfort her. My feelings for Mr. David are definitely not the same as yours for the bald teacher. Lily snorted. What's your basis? Why do you doubt the relationship between me and the bald teacher? As for the basis, because, as soon as I started, I felt my face heating up. Just thinking about it made my blood boil. Even though I'd prepared myself well, I still couldn't find the courage to say it, even though it was Lily, my best friend. And I knew our conversation wouldn't reach anyone else's ears. Then I realized that I was really too timid. Lily always said that she could easily make Mr. David roll his eyes. You know, Mr. David was always so gentle in front of us. Lily always told me to be bolder, saying that being too reserved would create a distance between me and the teacher. But I didn't take her good advice. Lily stared at me, tilting her head in confusion. She was getting impatient that I thought, if it were Mr. David sitting across from me, and one day I were to tell him this, he would be even more impatient. After all, time was so tight in senior year of high school, and he never waited for anyone. As his favorite student, I knew him best. Finally, I summoned up my courage, lowered my head, and leaned forward across the large library table. Lily cooperated and leaned over, turning her body sideways and offering her ear to me. My voice was so soft that it was even quieter than my pounding heartbeat. I could barely hear myself. But Lily must have heard me, because she suddenly turned her head to look at me, her almond-shaped eyes wide open. Clearly shocked beyond words that I pretended to be calm and sat back. Well, your eyelashes are so long. And your eyes are really beautiful. Lily was unusually stunned and couldn't respond to my teasing for a long time. Complex emotions flashed through her eyes. And there was a hint of disappointment. I just thought she was shocked by my rebellious thoughts. Don't worry, I comforted her jokingly. You're still the only one in my heart. Not even Mr. David can shake your position. Lily forced a smile and lowered her head. Lost in thought, she sat back in her seat. After a while, she tore off a page of scratch paper with the sign formula I had just written for her on it. Then she quickly wrote another line below and handed it to me. Are you serious? Lily's handwriting was beautiful. She had won an award for her penmanship in the city. Of course. My handwriting was a bit childish in comparison, thinking of Mr. David. I added another sentence. I think Mr. David's handwriting is also really beautiful. It's even better than yours. Lily was sitting across from me, looking worried at first, but after seeing my reply, she was amused. The setting sun shone in through the window, casting a beautiful halo around her. She looked so gentle. Lily's worried gaze fell on me and finally turned into helplessness. This change in her expression reminded me of Mr. David. He often looked at me like that. She mouthed to me, I promise. I won't tell anyone. Lily kept her promise perfectly. She never did anything to let me down. It was all my own fault that my feelings for Mr. David were revealed. After talking with Lily, I often had dreams. In my dreams, it wasn't Lily sitting across from me that afternoon, but Mr. David. He was as cold as usual. I had the same dream for a whole week, and every time I failed to say what I wanted to say, even if I tried to whisper it in his ear like that time, I just couldn't do it. In the end, I became a bit afraid of sleeping and gradually started to suffer from insomnia. After the second mock exam, the college entrance examination was approaching. My mental state was getting worse day by day, and it was common for me to doze off in class. Actually, at this stage, everyone's academic level was already determined. Even if I slept in class every day during the last 100 days, I might not decline much. What's more, my grades didn't decline. With Lily's help, my only weak subject, physics, was even improving slowly. After the story of solving problems while sleeping, there was another legend about me studying while sleeping. My classmates made fun of me, but everyone knew that the reason my grades didn't drop even though I slept in class was that I used the time I usually spent sleeping to study. They didn't care. The teachers didn't care. And my parents didn't care either. I was good at hiding my problems. So no one knew that my mental state was getting worse because of this secret. How could my study be stable when I was in such a bad mental state? Based on this assumption, no one asked me what was wrong. It was as if academic performance was the only indicator reflecting my entire state. Sometimes I thought adults were so easy to deceive, but when I thought about it carefully, I felt wronged. But Mr. David wasn't one of those easily deceived people that I had actually expected that Mr. David would notice something was wrong with me. The reason was that smile when he praised me for being quick-witted last semester. I firmly believe that Mr. David didn't see me as just a student who had to rush for the college entrance examination. Instead, he saw me as an independent individual with my own emotions. Or maybe I just subconsciously let my guard down in front of Mr. David. Or maybe I wanted him to know that I wasn't doing well. The school celebrated its anniversary and gave us half a day off. The school authorities organized a charity sale, and even senior year students could enjoy the holiday and participate. This extra half day off made everyone remember the school's birthday firmly. When everyone was packing up, I was so sleepy that I couldn't keep my eyes open. I lay down on a pile of test papers, about to fall asleep. I was sitting by the window near the corridor. Before closing my eyes, I saw Mr. David standing outside, looking down at me with raised eyebrows. His eyes were full of curiosity, as if he wanted to watch me fall asleep right then and there. I forced a smile at him, but in the end, I really did fall asleep on the spot. That I felt so embarrassed and subconsciously regarded it as a dream after all. It wasn't the first time I'd dreamed of Mr. David. When I woke up, I didn't know how long I'd slept. I took out a tissue to wipe my saliva and saw a line of running regular script on it. It was from Mr. David. Have a good rest. You've been too tired recently. I was stunned. Then I suddenly stood up and started looking everywhere for my treasure box to hide the tissue. When I was rummaging through my desk drawer, I remembered that my treasure box was always at home. I was really sleepy, muddled. I put the tissue in my palm and examined it carefully. Only then did I notice a signature below the line. My heart felt as sweet as if it were smeared with honey. In fact, he didn't need to sign at all. I could recognize his handwriting. My pen was on the windowsill in a strange position, as if someone had used it outside and just left it there. Then I realized that what had happened just now wasn't a dream. I felt so embarrassed and shy, whether it was a dream or not. At that moment, I was so excited that I accepted it all. I didn't care if it was embarrassing. My excitement overrode all other thoughts. After all, Mr. David had taken the initiative to care about me. This was a huge breakthrough that had never happened before. At that moment, I made a decision. This tissue didn't need to be put in the treasure box. Maybe it could say what I couldn't say in person. I was looking forward to a romantic ending. At that time, I wasn't as hesitant about feelings as I am now. When I was young, I was always decisive. I wrote down my thoughts line by line on that tissue and put it in my exercise book and handed it in, hoping that Mr. David would know how I felt. It was really that simple. I never expected anything more. In fact, even if there could be more, it shouldn't be something I considered alone. When I was young, I was too rash. I didn't think about how troubled Mr. David, as a teacher, would be. Now that I think about it, I'm really not as considerate as Lily. The next day, I didn't go to school. I rarely asked my parents to help me ask for a leave. The fatigue that I had hidden for so many days showed. They noticed that I was really under too much pressure, and let me have a good rest at home. I don't know what happened after that. I didn't want to think about Mr. David's response. Maybe subconsciously, I also thought I had done something wrong. So I subconsciously wanted to escape and didn't want to recall that day. I didn't go back to school until the third day after the school anniversary. The classmates in the class asked me with concern about my physical condition. The teachers also asked a question or two. Lily even made an excuse of going to the restroom to come to our class specifically to check if I was okay. Everything seemed to be back to normal, as if nothing had changed. However, that was not the case. Mr. David, he probably started to keep his favorite student at a distance. This change happened so naturally and subtly that I was sure only I noticed it. Just like that initial smile of appreciation, I was certain that I was the only one who knew. This was an extraordinary yet ordinary situation. It came from nowhere and disappeared without a trace. It emerged with great fanfare and faded away with a huge impact, all of which were just my own emotions, having nothing to do with anyone else. My inner turmoil was like a whale slaughtering a school of fish in the deep sea, while on the surface, everything seemed as peaceful as ever. My grades, that digital indicator reflecting my entire state, remained unaffected. This time, I really thought that adults were easy to deceive. Mr. David included. At the end of senior year of high school. Mr. David had completed all the review plans on his teaching outline. There were still 15 minutes left in the class. When he put down the outline, his tall and slender back paused for a moment. The surroundings gradually fell silent. He turned around and scanned the whole class, before his eyes landed on me. I lowered my head. I clearly felt his gaze pause and then move away. Then he started to speak. "I've taught everything I can," he said. His fingers were still stained with white chalk dust. He took out a wet wipe from his pocket and wiped his fingers. His face was calm, showing no emotions. "Your senior year of high school is coming to an end." This sudden change of topic caught everyone off guard. "Ending means parting." He smiled faintly. "I've taught 4 groups of senior year students. You are the most excellent. The ones I've dedicated the most to. And naturally, the group I've invested the most emotion in." I lowered my head, feeling as if my heart was being held tightly and pricked with fine needles. His speaking speed slowed down, and he seemed tired. "After this semester, I'll go back to teach freshmen. I wonder if I'll ever meet students like you again, who are smart, bold, lively, energetic, and full of hope." The class became quiet. This silence was different from the silence during his regular classes. There was no sound of turning test papers, no sound of pens dropping to the ground, and no whispering of discussions. Only Mr. David was speaking. His voice had no obvious intonation, but it was filled with emotions that I couldn't describe, deep and vast, beyond my comprehension. That we all thought that Mr. David was a great teacher. No one in the class had ever said anything bad about him. Everyone could see his dedication and responsibility. At that moment, I clearly realized that Mr. David was truly a great teacher. From beginning to end, he never forgot to guide me on the right path. He said. The year I entered college, I got lost on campus. I walked past countless dormitory buildings, not knowing which way was which. Finally, I found a new place. It was a large square with 2 rows of sycamore trees on both sides. The golden leaves covered the ground. When I looked up, I saw the word library. I hope you'll be the same, in the future or right now, no matter what you go through. After being lost, you can see beautiful sycamore trees and the library. Whether it's learning knowledge, learning about life, or learning to love, it's all about learning. He said these words while looking at me, his eyes gentle and filled with the same appreciation as always. As if I was still his favorite student who was spoiled rotten. Yes, I was his favorite student. Just a student. I felt something in my heart settle down. Yet at the same time, something seemed to be torn apart forever. These 2 complex feelings collided with each other, mixed with the atmosphere of farewell in senior year. I lowered my head and started to cry. My left eye shed tears for my high-spirited self, and my right eye for the unattainable him. Later, when I went to Harvard University, I found out that there were sycamore trees everywhere. Mr. David was once lost among the dormitory buildings, while I was lost among the golden sycamore trees. Here there were sycamore trees, and there were sycamore trees too. But where were the sycamore trees he saw? My high school life ended, and my college life began in full swing. There were new feelings and new encounters in this new stage. I remained single. It wasn't that I didn't want to date, but I just didn't have the courage to say, "I like you," anymore. Gradually, I lost touch with my old friends. The last time I heard about Lily was when I learned that she was admitted to a normal university and said she would go back to our alma mater as a teacher after graduation. I thought she would teach physics, but she said, a bit embarrassed, that it was math. My heart ached again when I talked about high school again. It seemed that I could gradually let go of the past regrets. It was as if everything had an answer. I could already smile and summarize my past infatuation, and create a happy ending for that one-sided love that ended without a result. After all, teachers and students are just teachers and students. How much romance could there be? Everything from that time was still sleeping in my treasure box until I received Lily's wedding invitation. The subway door opened. It was my stop. I stood up, my expression calm. I had always been good at hiding my emotions, and now I was even better at it. The groom was Mr. David, the bride was Lily. The wedding theme was my thoughts. My love for David during the school anniversary in senior year of high school. I fell asleep on the table. When I woke up and wanted to wipe my saliva with a tissue, I saw a line of beautiful running regular script on it, which said, "Have a good rest. You've been too tired recently." And there was a signature below. 3 simple words: Mr. David. Romance belonged to others. And I had nothing. The old wounds and new pains felt different. I thought that everything started and ended with the title, Favorite Student. But this invitation told me otherwise. Mr. David was a great teacher, but it didn't mean he wasn't a great lover. There were many reasons for rejection, but there was only one reason for falling in love, truly loving her. If you love someone, even mountains and seas can't stop you. He could also ignore everything for the one he loved. He wasn't just restrained. He also had passion. I didn't know that side of him because I wasn't the one worthy of his efforts. That my self-assumed beginning and end were just a farce. Mr. David said that when you reach the end of being lost, you'll see beautiful sycamore trees. But I kept wandering among the sycamore trees, probably destined to be trapped forever. The vast expanse of golden sycamore trees was so dazzling that I was trapped and couldn't escape. The feelings were like drinking water, only I knew whether it was warm or cold, like the words he said to me in the last class. So many veiled meanings were actually refusals. I blamed him for not expressing himself clearly and myself for being so stupid. Love is love. Who cares about identities? The romance I never had the courage to imagine was all left to others by the male lead. She was his female lead. And it had nothing to do with me. As for the courage to love that was taken away from me, it was nothing. Just like me, it was self-righteous nonsense. A supporting role among supporting roles. A side track within a side track. In love, it's also a matter of winning and losing. My story was just a laughable joke. Nothing more.